because we all know that your novel, River East, River West, has been celebrated globally, shortlisted for the Women's Prize for Fiction. So, firstly, I want to know more about the process of you writing this novel.
Writing a novel is a very long and difficult but fun process. I compare it to running a marathon. You have to keep steady and do a little bit of it every day and know that it will take a long time to complete, especially speaking personally as a first-time fiction writer. I started writing the book when I was about 25.
25.
And at the beginning, it was just a short story about a teenage girl in Shanghai, in Pudong, taking a math tutoring lesson on a Saturday. And it was tied to a childhood memory of me being forced to take a math tutoring lesson by my mother because my math grade was dipping a little bit. But I wanted to write about my teenage years in Shanghai. And then I quickly thought that maybe the short story could be the seed for something much longer that unlocked many more memories. I knew I wanted to write a book, and a novel felt like the most appropriate form to tell the story, because it was not right for me to write a memoir at 25, and my life was not so interesting.
But you are old, you could do that.
Yeah, I think if you have a very full life and experiences, but I just had some small, interesting moods and memories and nuances, and I thought a novel was a way to take those memories, but make the story much bigger, much larger, much more interesting. But it was a difficult process to learn how to write a scene, learn how to create characters, and not just write descriptions of memories. It took me maybe 3 years to write and revise it. Then in the US, which is where I lived at the time, and I wanted to publish in a book in English, I was writing it in English, you have to find a literary agent who then will sell it to the publishers. So that process took about 2 years, from finding an agent to selling the book to a publisher, and then you revise it all over again with your publisher for over a year. And then the book needs to be printed and marketed and distributed. So from start to finish, it was between 5 and 6 years.
Oh my God, it's really a long
process. Yeah.
What does it mean to you to bring this story here to Hong Kong?
It's very special to be here and to speak to an audience who can really understand the themes of the book, because when I do events in the US or in the UK or in Europe, I want to think the book can be appealing to all readers and everyone can be interested in this story. At the same time, it's a very specific book about a big city in Asia in the 21st century, with Westerners and Western influence coming in, and all the social dynamics of this mix of nationalities and history. And I think it's especially gratifying when you are speaking to an audience who can understand either directly or indirectly a lot of the themes of the book. It feels different being in Hong Kong and speaking about the book than being in Boston or being in London, because here it feels like I don't need to explain so much or to give context. A lot of Hong Kongers, they have grown up seeing a lot of foreigners or international schools around them. They have grown up seeing a lot of the changes in demographics and economics and politics around them. So they understand a lot of the themes of the book firsthand.
You write Alva in the book. Alva's biracial identity and her longing for an American life. So the question is, how much of your own journey navigating French, Chinese, and American identities found its way into her character?
Yeah, I think I actually did not have a special obsession with America the way Alva had. It's more complicated because my mom is French,
Yeah.
and I would actually go to France every year to visit my French grandparents. So Alva is a much more dramatic version of someone. Yes, she's a lot. I mean, she's a very dramatic teenager, and I think for her, it's all about this illusion that she has of a version of adolescence. I watch a lot of American TV shows and movies though, and this is something I try to, also put into Alva's character. But again, it's a dramatization of what if someone thought the movie version of the world and teenagehood was real life, and she thought she was being denied the adolescence in American TV shows and movies, and she wants to get to it. And so, she
So Alva, she has a like American dream, or not?
I wouldn't say she has the American dream in the sense that she wants like an economic advancement, because I think she's, as a teenager, too young to maybe really think that. Maybe that's more for Lu Feng, her stepfather, has some version of a dream where he wants to just rise and rise and rise in economic and in status. I think for Alva, it was about chasing a kind of teenage dream, like chasing a kind of romantic adolescence, like the one in the movies that she thought she didn't have.
It's like a fantasy?
Yeah, it's like a teenage fantasy for her. And I think for Lu Feng, it is more of a economic fantasy.
I noticed that you write in English. Is it your third language?
Yes.
Does this choice influence your like storytelling?
Yeah, I think it definitely does, because it makes the audience primarily at first English speakers. Of course, every writer hopes that their book will be translated in many languages and that many people from different countries will get to read it. But first and foremost, it meant that I was writing for an English-speaking audience. And I had to keep that in mind when writing about China or about my childhood, that many people might not be so familiar with a lot of these things, which is back to what I was saying at first. It was so special coming to Hong Kong and doing some literary events, because a lot of Hong Kongers do speak English or read in English, and they are familiar with a lot of the things in my book.
So Hong Kong is no problem.
Yeah.
The number of the female writers is still small. And women who want to write for a living also face many difficulties. Yes. And in the history, like the American writer, feminist Joanna Ross, she has written a book called How to Suppress Women's Writing in like 1983 to express the systematic suppression of women's writing by the society and culture for a long time. So my question is, have you ever had this feeling in your writing career? And have you encountered any difficulties as a result of being a woman?
Definitely, I think as all women can attest in daily life, professionally, there's many small ways and big ways in which I think primarily it is always a fight to be taken just as seriously as a man would be, whereas a man might not need to fight to earn that respect. It feels like we as women need to prove our seriousness and prove our intellect and prove our weight in order to get the same level of acknowledgement. I think in the writing world nowadays, actually a lot of readers are women, and there's more and more writers published who are women, but there is still this conception that women readers with women writers, but that male readers prefer reading usually male writers because they are more serious or famous, right? And I think, of course, this is changing, and hopefully more male readers, if there's a great book and it's by a woman, they don't even think, they just read it. But I think there's still, especially in what is considered serious writing, this tendency to still see this old world of a world where, up until, I don't know, the 1950s or 60s, most serious published works that were, being admitted by publishers and covered in the newspapers were by men. I'm speaking about the English language publishing. I don't know so much about the Chinese language, but I imagine it's similar, right? That everybody reads Jin Yong, but only women read Xiu Yao, or only women readers will read certain, even if they're very popular women writers. And this is what I would like to kind of expand. Like, I hope a book like mine will be appealing to men and women. I don't think about the gender of the reader when I write it. So these kind of unspoken divides of male readers only reading mostly male writers and female readers mostly reading female writers, I think that hopefully will break open and change in the future.
Yes, and it's good is that you are a novelist and you are changing this. All the readers, they will read your book, and not only because you are beautiful, just because your work deserves them to read it. In the history, also the English writer Virginia Woolf, she wrote in A Rome of One's Own in 1929 that women need financial support to write. And in her view, the reason women writers and their novels don't seem to be as good as men is because of a lack of opportunity, not a lack of talent.
Yes.
So what do you think of this view?
I agree completely. I think the history of women being able to access more higher education and economic opportunity is still very recent. All of these changes are beginning to improve, but they have only happened really in the past less than 100 years. So all the systemic ways in which women lack opportunities are still very relevant to women today. And I think being a writer, the finances of what will allow you to write as a career are still very difficult, and I think if you think about who has access to economic opportunities or economic backing still today, usually it's still men who have access to more economic opportunities and therefore can afford to take more risks.
So in your opinion, what should women do if they want to achieve some kind of success in writing? Do you have any advice for the young women writers today?
I think it's about growing comfortable with risk and taking yourself seriously and dare to ask for more. I think as a young woman, I was always a little bit scared or intimidated to ask for any opportunities, ask for things. I thought maybe I would be perceived as someone who is inconveniencing others or wanting too much or has impure intentions because I am looking for an opportunity from someone and this is too transactional. And oftentimes I would rather not ask than to risk offending or inconveniencing someone. And then a lot of mentors in the writing world said, but male writers get their career by asking for things all the time.
Oh, right.
And this is how, especially in artistic careers, asking for opportunities and connections is how oftentimes you advance. And so if you never ask for anything and just wait for opportunities to come along because you are too afraid to be uncomfortable, then you will always be, a few steps back. So I am saying this for myself too. I have to remind myself every day, do not be afraid to ask, because this is how this industry works.